And we're live with Rachel, who is ENFP AF subtype, and so we're gonna experience the Rachelness before Carol arrives. So Rachel, tell us about your giraffe watch that in no way at all fits the ENFP stereotype.
Okay, I'm sorry, Mum. I'm sorry.
It's not a problem. Let me move the phone.
Okay. Hi, Jonathan. So basically, this is, I'm going to put it back to, I don't know where to look now. I'm just staring at a picture of Jonathan. So this is, thank you for taking my screen off. That's much less distracting. So basically, this is my little, don't laugh. Sorry, that's really rude. You can do what you like. Okay, so this is my giraffe, and this is my new watch, and I was very excited about it, but I'm slightly less excited now because of the novelty's worn off. So basically, I saw this in the shop, and I was very excited by it, and I wanted to buy one, and my mother assumed that I wanted to buy it for my nieces and nephews, but no, I wanted to buy actually the parrot version of this for myself. He then told us that it was going for very cheap, and we were very excited, and that there were other ones, and there was a parrot, there was a monkey, and I was very happy. My mum, I insisted that I got one, and my mum was like, no, they're for your nieces and nephews. How old are you, Rachel? I said nothing, and I made sure that the shop owners had the impression that I was probably about 14, because I am short, and I had chubby cheeks. So he remembers me from when I was younger, so I think he thinks that I'm the younger sister of me because I've dyed my hair. And he hasn't seen me in years, so yeah, so then anyway, he handed it over and we bought them, and I paid £1 towards my £3 watch, which does this. 1 second. Okay, that wasn't part of the trick. Anyway, as he handed it over, and see that they're enjoying this very much. As he handed it over, I kind of subconsciously just intuited his feelings, and I was just glowing from cheek to cheek. He was clearly enjoying selling this to us. And as soon as I came home, I made sure I got the giraffe one because I wanted the giraffe one. And I took it out of the packaging. And my mum wasn't particularly happy that I didn't really wait until we had given them to my nieces and nephews. I just chose the one, and then they have 3 others. But they have the more like colourful ones. I only have the one which is predominantly monotone and looks the most mature of the 3 children's watches.
Rachel, do you have any blue tack that you could position under your slate to stop it from falling backwards?
That would be a very intelligent idea. I could transport it to the other room, but I don't have a thing to attach.
I think you're fine where you are.
Okay.
It's just
I can put like a Jewish fund thing. Yeah, probably shouldn't say that. I don't know. This is heavy and it contains coins, but I then can't see anyone. So I'm
okay, gotcha.
I'm speaking to the Jewish National Fund,
Okay.
which is awkward.
I think if you're careful, it'll be okay. It's part of the atmosphere.
There, I have a pot.
Excellent.
Okay, but I still can't see. I can't see anyone.
Oh no. Oh, it doesn't really matter as long as.
Anyway, so we are here to discuss extroverted thinking, which is shortened in many socionics terms to TE, capital T, small e.
Or sometimes, I think Dr. G wanted to call it P, and I heard to remember it as P for practical thinking, or productivity and profits.
Yeah, to this day, I am not entirely sure what it encompasses. I know what introverted thinking involves. So I kind of assume that it's all thinking and practically related stuff that doesn't encompass that. But Ben David will give a better explanation.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ben.
And the reason why I can is that I have done a little bit of TE myself by just going towards stuff that's come up with by other people. So, for example, Carl Jung himself. So what's quite weird about this is I'm using TE by going to somebody else's ideas where he can then complain about how crap he is. Right. So, but in order to use TE, I've got to go to him. So, you know, I think this is it. TE in POI. Now, I call it POI because I believe that's the better name. But you see, what am I like as an INTP, giving things long titles?
What does POI stand for again?
The psychology of individuation. Rather than psychological types, individuation, because it's a little bit more of a dynamic process, in my opinion. So
I like that.
how people become individuals. And he actually says that this can only really happen within a free society in which people can sort of choose their own path.
What is freedom, though, Ben? What is freedom?
Well, that's one of these ironic things where you actually need a sort of a net to play against. Because if you have total freedom, then you're also free from wants and free from motivations.
Therefore, you just don't bother to individuate.
Yes.
Like, why have a personality at all when I can sit around and be a blob?
Yeah.
So actually, we benefit from our struggles in life. See, this is the real NF kind of take home of this. Our struggles have meaning, create meaning, and interesting life for us.
Right. So what we're going to do? So we can go over tea. Carol's here. Now we can go to the start. She's here. So Carol, we started off. Rachel showed her ENFP credentials via her watch choice. Please show it to Carol, Rachel.
Yeah, Jonathan couldn't really contain himself, and it was quite wonderful.
Yeah, have you shown? I wasn't quite sure. Rachel, did you show your watch to Carol?
Oh, here's my watch. This is my watch, it also does this.
Oh, I love it! It's fabulous.
But I've moved it so that the giraffe head is at the top of the neck, so I need to move it down.
That is so wonderful.
So it actually works.
Okay, now I have to confess. Now that you've done this, I have to be honest. I actually have a Wizard of Oz watch with Dorothy and her red shoes on it. Oh my God, I love it.
You're amazing.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for, and I hope y'all didn't wait on me. I just had to get from where I was to get home to do this.
Actually, I heard something really interesting. And you might agree with this, Carol. I remember seeing an Open University program once. Where they actually said that Dorothy's red shoes had a little bit of... Rachel did not collapse. It was her slate.
I might collapse at some point. I'm pretty sick.
There was this thing that it was a bit of a subtext that the red shoes that Dorothy wore related to sexuality because... women wore red shoes at the time to sort of like signify that in the 40s. Have you heard that?
She's supposed to be a child.
I don't know. Yeah, she was like 12. I don't know. Here's the deal, Ben. In the book, the shoes weren't red in the book.
Right.
So Frank, what's his name? He did not give her red shoes. I imagine she got given red shoes for cinematographic purposes, right? They were red sequin shoes so they would show up and everything. And I don't know if they thought any more deeply than, I think they were they not like clear shoes? I forget what color they were in the book.
Ruby slippers, but that might be an example of like an NF person doing the Open University program, like reading these things into it.
That could be.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought you were about to say there was an example of NF movie producer, and I was like,
there was David Duchovny one. Yeah, go on, Rachel.
I found a picture, and because there's I told you about Ziffer Black where I used to hang out several years ago, but the point is there's a picture of me up, and I found the photo again, and seeing it many years later allowed me to read all sorts of meanings into this abstract painting, and it's really interesting, and you can analyze it and etc. Yeah, that was a very NF thing to do. There was a small painting, and I managed to produce like 2 paragraphs about this painting with no obvious meaning, but at the same time it very well reflected the psyche of the individual. Anyway.
Right. So, Carol, how much time do we have?
An hour and a half. 90 minutes would be good for me.
Because because I got the TI rider, that sort of like it puts commands in it whispers in the ear of my NE to like sort of discipline it a little bit. Now, if I had 3 hours, I'd probably just like completely just tangent out. Right. So we actually need the proper model. I think. Oh, that's the wrong one. I think it's over here. Is that the right one? Yeah. We've got to show the. Oh, right. Okay, now we've got a little bit of weirdness coming up here. I've got a little bit of... And this is actually something I can ask you about, where... and Thorane as well, because Thorane is working with Personality Hacker, he's doing their course. And they get taught the car model, and that they call the launcher, the tertiary function, the 10-year-old function. And
well, baby calls it the eternal child function. Yeah,
and in classical socionics, they sort of like have it as that function that like when people start to develop, it's like the one they really want to improve. So like INFJs can like get this thing where they really want to improve their TI. And here's the thing, under the right circumstances. So for instance, Maria, INFJ, was with a teacher that she really liked, a maths teacher, and so she developed into a mathlete in Moscow in the 1980s. And she described it as that as a shift where the INFJ can act like an INTP.
Ben, it's amazing you would bring this up today. Not only do I have like my three closest friends are all INFJs. I've got a new INFJ client that I met with yesterday for the 4th time. And I actually had mistyped her as analytical because I have found, because they want to develop, and I think, Dick Thompson would say, sometimes, Dr. Dick Thompson, sometimes people develop the 3rd function to get to more safety. So like people like me and INFJs who have a feeling mental function in the 2nd place, that's a very vulnerable place to be. So for me to go to my tertiary is extroverted thinking. For INFJs to do so is introverted thinking.
Yeah.
And they can go there. They feel safer there. They're not vulnerable there. And INFJs can come across so NT-like. And again, it just got shown to me by my brand new client. So it's amazing you would bring that up today. I totally agree with that.
See, I sort of like see it as, I do hangouts with quite a few INFJs, and they seem to have a certain amount of interest, but not as much interest as a full-on INTP. What do you say about that, Jonathan?
Gotta unmute, Jonathan.
I just tried to my best NT stare. I just...
Oh, having said that, I'm just going to do a slight digression where Carl Jung actually wrote something that sounded very INTP, and then I'll get back to, because I know the time limits on board. Here.
Good anti-stare.
Right, what we got here? This bit here. I will disregard all those possible sensations and feelings which become noticeable as a more or less disturbing accompaniment to my train of thought. So I've put does a good job here of sounding INTP, because you just want to be alone with your thoughts.
Well, and I would also say I know a lot of INTJs, and they're very not censoring worldly focused either. I think INTJs can be very, just want to be alone with their thoughts too. They lead with that introverted intuition, and as my mother would say, they think thoughty thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, I've got that here where, Carl Jung's saying, it's all there like...
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel, for seeing the humor in that.
That is good. Very cool. It's also... Oh, there you go. The launcher function. You get launched by the Zebedee.
Very cool.
Before, Rachel? Right.
Huh?
Rachel. Not Rachel, Zebedee. Right. Right. Okay, we've got to get on track because of time limitations. Got to bring some order to this. Right.
Go, you INTP. You bring some order to this.
All right. What have we got? Launcher. So there's a weird kind of thing here where it's like the person likes it, but they don't necessarily have a lot of energy for it. So it's almost like, and I'll ask you this, Carol, because you'd say you've got a lot of experience of INFJs.
Yeah, I do.
Do you think that they have a large appetite for TI, but they get filled up rather easily? They've got eyes bigger than their belly when it comes to TI.
Well, the way I would put it is they're clearly catalyst in nature. So that extroverted feeling, whereas it's not exuberant the way an ENFP would be overly exuberant with it, they're very measured in extroverted feeling because they're very sensitive to what a big impact it has on other people. That said, when they do come out of that catalyst, like my friend, one of my close friends majored in philosophy in college. Right. I think that's an incredibly TI thing to do, is to major in philosophy. And I did not like one of the philosophy courses I took, and I went back to my modern culture courses that much more fitted me. But I just see, yes, I'm sure they don't do it as much as you do, for example. That makes total sense since it's your dominant. But it still amazes me how NT they can come across and how analytical they can be. It just astonished me to see it over and over and over again. And remember, BB describes it's a relief to go to your third function. But no, of course, they wouldn't spend their life there the way you do. But it gives you a relief from the burden of your dominant and auxiliary functions. And NF can be a pretty heavy burden to carry because you're like in tune with other people and you're trying to make this all work out. So going to introverted thinking is like a relief for her for carrying the burden of being responsible for everybody's feelings. I'll shut up now, but that's how it comes to me.
Like in terms of my mum, like that's definitely something I've seen with her, like the ideas world and thinking and logic is.
Yeah, you have the floor, Rachel, because I'll let everybody know. Rachel's mother is an INFJ mathematician. So
wow. She's like living proof of this thing we're talking about.
Yeah.
1 second, guys.
But she can't talk about it too much because she's in like the next room. Oh no! Would Rachel be like go speak to these people? That was a bit cheeky. She would do. I don't know if you would do that, Rachel. That would be a little bit cheeky to say, I won't just talk about my mother, I will present her in the hangout.
Do you remember last time I tried that? Didn't go too well. She was reading. Don't INFJs, no, space.
Yeah, and also...
No, they don't like to be interrupted. Do not like to be interrupted. Very private people.
Oh, and I'll always remind people like Dario, and when he talks about development and how the brain can change, and that you do tend to go towards lower valued functions or the back passengers in the car model.
Right,
Tertiary and
right.
inferior. Right. So the idea here is, this is something that Maria talks about quite a bit, is the I'll just tell her what hangout it is. It's ENFP. Oh, Rachel, can I okay. I'll switch your mic off and then you can switch it back on, when you want to speak. I'll give you the proviso that when you want to speak, you can just turn it on and say whatever you want and interrupt. But the cost of that, I'll just kill your sound for a little bit. Right. What am I saying here? Oh, yes. So, as we said about INTP, so it's like when you said there, Carol, about what John Beebe said about go to the third function, tertiary function is relief. So the idea here is that the beneficiary shift is you go TI and then a dominant function. So in INFJ, that's NI, so TI, NI. Now in ENFP, the subject of this hangout, their beneficiary shift is fantastic because they go to ENTJ. So if you can get an ENFP that is, if they can be excited enough about a subject that they can become productive about it, then they're good to go. So for example, Carol, as an NF, as an ENFP, somebody wants to help people, she can then get involved with a business where you get to like have your cake and eat it sort of thing, where that's not quite accurate, but you know what I mean, where it's like you're doing something you love and you can bring TE into it.
My living example of that is in my 20s, I went to work as a computer software technical writer. And by my 30s, I was leading cross-functional teams. And then by my 40s, I was managing a department. So it's real clear to me that I went now, knowing what I know, thanks to BB and Linda Behrens, I was going down and grabbing my extroverted thinking to be able to do the project management to lead those teams and to meet those deadlines. It's real clear to me that if you don't develop extroverted, as an ENFP, if you don't develop extroverted thinking, you can't do those things because you need that function to accomplish it. That function, developing that function, helped me keep that job. I was paid as a technical writer and team leader and manager for 19 years. Thank God for TE.
And
so
one of the reasons, if people have not listened to previous hangouts with you, it's like because your parents were such advanced TE users. So it's
they all were. I was the only F within miles.
So like in Rachel's case, her parents are advanced TI users.
Right.
And absent-minded.
In your case, your parents are advanced TE users. I think it's INTJ and ISTJ, is that right?
INTJ. Well, actually, there was, yes, ISTJ and INTJ.
Wow, that must
So,
be an interesting position as a
there's a
child.
little bit of a... So
Oh,
this function is a little bit slightly contradictory in that sometimes, I suppose it depends on the person. So it's like you can look at a lot of ENFPs and a lot of INFJs, and you can say, whoa, those INFJs have got really, really strong TI, and then some of them haven't. So it depends on the development of the person. But then it also depends on maybe they've developed in a different way and gone towards a different function, so you can have INFJs that go towards TI, INFJs that go towards FE, and it depends like how their role enactment goes. So it's not just a case of they have to go towards that function.
And you're making a very good point here that is proven by my experience. Remember, I worked at a software company for 26 years. So think about it. What kind of INFJs would I have coming into my life? Ones that had enough TI to want to go work at a software company. So that's probably, proving your point there that I wasn't off working for a nonprofit somewhere with a bunch of INFJs. I was working in a software company with them. So good point, Jonathan. I'm sorry, Ben, good point. I'm seeing Jonathan's name right by your face at the bottom is my problem here.
I don't think I quite made that point, but I'll take credit for it because you've extrapolated from it.
Well, you said some of them go there and some of them don't.
Right.
So I'm thinking the ones that went there went to work for the same kind of company I did. Those of us who were willing to go to T in our tertiary were willing to work at a technical company. So we met each other.
Yeah, you took my point and made it better. You turned lead into gold.
There are like
No, you had it.
levels of there right now. Was it
so one of the
Rachel's talking. We just can't hear her.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you not hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, it's not that important.
Are you on?
Oh God, what's going on?
Oh, wait a minute. You're on, but you're low. I'll get you up.
Oh, wonderful.
You're back. You're back up now.
It really wasn't an important point. The important point was that being an ENFP, she managed to have multiple levels of there. There is both the metaphorical there of developing the tertiary at TE and also the physical being there in that company. I thought that was
very
a nice,
cool, dear. Very
poetic development.
Very cool. Thank you.
Right. Because what have we got here? So what Victor thinks. So where you got their pessimum energies, usually I suppose in general, maybe for less developed ENFPs, they don't have a lot of energy for TE. They're aspirational for it, and they need help from outside.
I've got to say, personally, this describes me very well. We're between the ages of about 13 and 19, 18. Where when I was between 13 and 16, I just had no interest. I couldn't do it. I knew that I needed to achieve goals, but I had no concept of the fact that other people do this thing. I just copied them, which meant that they were keeping to a timetable. And because I was around organized people, I happened to keep to a timetable. But then between the ages of about maybe 17 to 21, I was able to, if someone guided me, to make really good plans. Because once someone prompted me, then I could use my kind of NE to do that. And then kind of more recently, I've been able to just do it myself. But yeah, that's an interesting point about like the development process.
Rachel, that's a beautiful example of exactly what the development process is like.
Yeah, because usually Rachel's been in a situation where she will have stronger TI than the usual person with the ENFP preference. For two reasons. One, I think raw intelligence, but also the influence of her parents talking TI with her all the while.
Oh, absolutely.
I make these beautiful timetables that I'll just say it quickly. I'd make these beautiful timetables. They're perfectly well thought out. Could not implement them. Forgot that I was a physical human body in a world that had to do things.
That's the ENFP part, dear. We forget the reality. They're just ideas to us. So something fell. They're just ideas to us. So we forget that we need to be realistic in how we schedule them, because they're as beautiful ideas. They're very easy to schedule if you don't have to take in physical limitations. And that's very ENFP to not be grounded in the physical reality. Go ahead, Ben.
I was just saying, I recorded in a couple of voice messages about what would happen if the inferior function wasn't present. And I said for ENFPs, if they don't have SI, which Socionics defines as internal bodily harmony, and like taking care of bodily needs, it's like, that would be like the ENFP that is like just being controlled by the NE and not taking care of
Basically,
like
it's the mental
mundane things.
patient. It's the typical mental patient. The one who's like, the one who's kind of like, clothes, yeah, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, people aren't actually like that, but you know, like that's the stereotype.
Yes. Yeah. I
And
mean,
Ben, the ENFP who doesn't develop introverted sensing, it's such a struggle. And this was me in my 20s when I was so struggling with it. Before everything got computerized, I had to keep up with a physical piece of paper to pay bills. God help us all if I need to keep up with a physical piece of paper. My introverted sensing was so undeveloped that it was a struggle doing all the logistical things I needed to do as an adult and a homeowner and an automobile owner. It was a real hard struggle. And what convinced me to work on developing it is John Beebe said, the fourth function is the spine. And if you don't work on developing your fourth function well enough to support you, you don't get to be the very best version of who you got sent to be. So for ENFPs, if you don't work on your SI subconsciously, you don't get to be the best ENFP you have the possibility of being, because you're being undercut by underachieving in the logistical physical stuff. And that's the only thing. He's the only person who was ever able to say something that actually motivated me to develop introverted sensing. And I thank him for that.
Interesting to hear, because like from my experience, I ended up in an environment where like higher level intelligence, like typical kind of TI stuff, wasn't valued, and like the only thing that was really valued was like, can someone show themselves to like do very physical, practical things, and there was very little simulation. So in that environment, I wasn't even able to use most of my functions. So I was kind of forced to pay attention to the physical environment around me, because the physical environment was so limited. And I was also surrounded by sensing types. So it was kind of like a crash course over the course of about a year in SI, which I had never ever, like my parents are really very, very extraordinarily poor at it. So like, it was really interesting kind of having the luxury, but also the kind of pressure to develop that in an environment with people who could only really understand or identify with that. It's very difficult to explain in any more detail or any more clearly, but yeah, it was hell, because my SI was so poor, and I'm wondering how I can recreate that. But it was invaluable, because like, things were very much judged on, okay, can you literally, like, I don't know, are you physically healthy? Can you produce a very simple thing? Can you do this very simple task? Which is partly SE, but like, it's to do with like very SI stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it was really valuable, and I'm really glad that I had to do that. But yeah,
painful,
it's very
but
hard for an ENFP. It's very hard.
Painful but valuable. I think you described it well, Rachel.
Because I'd never felt more stupid when my higher level functions had been stripped of me.
Right.
Either because, yeah.
The way Socionics defines SI, it's very much like the essence of the SFJs in MBTI. It focuses on that sort of like caretaking aspect and like internal body harmony, rather than it sort of puts the stuff about logistics and it sort of ascribes that to other functions.
Oh, that's interesting. Because it's pretty. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Sorry. Interesting.
Yeah. And my personal feeling on that is that my personal feeling is that either book has to do with lower level NE, which is of course linked to higher level SI. It's just that I think that the mindset of NE is to find connections. And the reason why NPs want to find connections is they want to create a generalization.
But I think the other thing is you cannot be 100% present, and also, no, you can be. There is a tug between being 100% present and observing what you're doing around and following a linear process to its completion, and having lots of ideas going through in your head. If you're unfamiliar with a process and you're learning a process in the present and observing your surroundings, sorry, I'm a bit distracted by something going on over there. It's difficult to simultaneously have millions of ideas that you're pursuing. there is a limit to the amount of SI and NE you can do at this. I personally can do at the same time until a process is, I think the word is crystalline, is so much part of my automatic that I'm no longer dedicating attention to it, and therefore in a sense it's not so much SI because I'm not so conscious of it. It's not. I mean, there is a sense of harmony, but I don't know how to describe it. I don't know where it categorizes.
I would say as a reminder, just as Immanuel Kant had the noumenal realm and the phenomenal realm, the functions are representations of the processes, and with certain functions it's like it sort of points towards what the truth is rather than it being the truth in itself, and the actual truth being that there's not this neat division in our minds into eight discrete psychological functions, but there are these general, but it's amazing that the patterns are there and are shown in terms of tandem use and other things and intertype relations. So there is something to it.
I think that's really valuable, and it's really important to recognize that what we're describing is we're trying to reflect and represent the reality. We shouldn't confine the reality to our definitions.
Yeah, it's a sort of a map of the truth, but not the truth.
Very good, Ben. It's a map of the territory, but the map is not the territory.
Yeah.
Linda Behrens would say it's also... Rachel, can you hit your mic?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you. Linda Behrens would say that it's also very difficult to truly separate the sensing, the input and the output function, the judging and the perceiving function. It's very difficult to completely separate them. Like if you pair it with TE, that bleeds over into it, as opposed to pairing it with like NF or NT or ST or SF. She said there's a kind of bleeding over process, so it looks a little different and it's very hard to completely separate it out. Yeah. A lot of times we get trapped into, we're talking about SI, we really end up just trying to talk about ISTJs, and that's not totally fair. That's limiting us.
Yeah, you also touched there a little bit on the perennial JP problem for introverts, and INTPs will experience this, where internally we are structured, we are organized, our thoughts are organized. We want to organize our thoughts and theories, but not necessarily the world around us. And so,
very good.
And so the MBTI questions will be focused on organizing the world, because that way somebody is, I think the MBTI questions are good because they get people to look at their actions, and people are less likely to lie to themselves, because then they have to lie to themselves about a fact rather than an attitude, and people can convince themselves that they were, like, for instance, if you went based on internally, you could convince yourself you're something you're not, because it's hard to disprove it when you're talking about an inner motivation. But if you look at, if you ask about a particular situation, in this situation, if you had this and this, which would you decide? Then you're going towards actions, and if you arrange actions carefully enough, then you can reveal character through choice in a certain situation. So, for example, if somebody chooses money over a friendship, or they put their friends first before the money, then that reveals something about their character when there's a clear choice. And the more information we have about the situation, the deeper the insight into someone's character. And I frequently have conversations. So I do appreciate the importance of motivation, but as you know, people can delude themselves about their motivations, where you've got the ego there. And so I want to look at a combination of motivation and behavior. I'll switch Rachel back on if she has anything to say. Oh no, what's weird? She's not down the side.
Did
but
she
she's
disappear?
In there now. I think she'll be back though. Hopefully she'll be back. Yeah, she's back.
There she is. There she is.
Oh, you're back.
Sorry, it's a mistake.
Oh, okay.
I have a theory that I'm secretly an INFJ.
Wow, that's a lot of control, Annie. things are possible. I frequently, I mean, I like using Linda. In fact, it was Carol that taught me Linda Bones' term to say somebody with ENFP preferences. Oh,
I was ready to abandon all of this because I felt it was limiting. So it's somewhat ironic that according to the theory, someone of a similar type told you also found this issue in terms of the mentality it created in them. I'll pause for a second. And thereby, yes, I forgot what I was saying now.
And usually Rachel is very articulate.
I know, but I have to not stop because otherwise I forget the idea I'm having.
Yeah, that's part of the NE thing. Like when
so
you're going on a
I tried to stop so that like it wasn't excessive, and then the problem was that the idea stopped with it because sometimes the thinking occurs out loud.
Right. So this could be where you've got like your TI and your FE. Certainly with the NFPs, you'll see two functions. When they're in full flow, you've got any ideas and the expressiveness working together. Even though the FE is not valued, it's there. You can see it working together. And when ENTPs are doing it, they've not got the same expressiveness and like looking at feedback of their audience. I think ENFP is a little bit more meta and will adapt to the feedback of the audience.
The NFPs are more than a little bit more meta.
Yeah. ENTPs will just continue talking until they get their point across that they think is so brilliant. Right. Anyhow, so launcher function. So Victor thinks it doesn't have much energy, but at the same time, people are hot for it. So it's that thing of like eyes bigger than your belly. It's like, oh, you're really into it, but you're not when it actually comes down to it.
Oh, I love making plans. Like, how many plans I actually stick to, but like, my mum will vouch, like, I make lots of plans. I need to be quiet, sorry. Yep,
we'll get to the bullet points soon, I promise you, and that'll be in there. So, launcher, the function in this position is triggered from the outside, just as it's referred to as launcher. So the idea that maybe the dual. So, like I said, if you're around somebody who's a good TE user, then they can. So, Carol, as you were saying with your TE parents, that it's like you value the function, and so you'd like help with it. Whereas if you compare it with the break function, you're not liking TI as much. So it's like you'd rather have the TE approach.
Well, Ben, that's interesting you should say that. I clearly developed TE first, and that could be helped explain by environment. That was all that was going on around me, and even as a small child, I had to speak it. However, I have found of course, remember, I was at midlife at this point.
Yeah.
I was learning from Linda Behrens and John Beebe, both introverted thinking. She leads with it. He his auxiliary is it. And I found it extraordinarily valuable how they could distinguish between things and clarify. And I realized I was missing that. So I couldn't actually do it myself. But instead of irritating me, I just found it extraordinarily valuable because they were giving me gifts that I could not dig out myself. And I realized that. Now, when I was younger, maybe 20 years younger, guess what? I might have just been irritated by their introverted thinking. But I got it in my 40s. I started learning from them. And, oh, my God, I was hungry for it. So even though I don't think that's me.
Ben, your mic is, like, acting up. Your mic for your second channel.
Okay, thanks. That's better. So I think it's interesting that they don't irritate me. I can't do it as well. I naturally do TE, but I so valued what introverted thinking brought me that I loved. So by midlife, my most valued mentors were two people who taught me through their introverted thinking.
Oh my goodness. One of my biggest challenges at the moment is to what extent should we set how rigid should our definitions of things be? And how does that relate to how we emotionally experience the world and how creative we can be? And that's such a massive kind of story for me over the last couple of years, and it's really unresolved at the moment because it links to all sorts of other things. But yeah, that's so interesting.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah. Is the mic okay now, Rachel?
Yeah, it's much better. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.
Right. So So the idea is that it's triggered from the outside. Now this is Victor going a little bit TI, like, you know, where arguably the TE users would say your theoretical tail is wagging the dog. So there's little elements of that. So it's like Victor is very, very, very much like that. And so you have pros and cons with it, Carol, where you can get to some places where you get a lot of insight, but then you can also go down some places where it's like interesting, but it doesn't quite match my own experience.
I don't know. It sounds to me a little bit like when you go to like some religious like ceremonies and they really try and Ben, your microphone again. Oh my goodness. Thank you. They really like try and make a moral out of this story, but you end up just having a story that's very tenuously linked to the moral kind of thing that they would like to create from it. That's a slightly tenuous parallel. I realise. How ironic. Anyway.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, there's no ecstatic now.
All right, okay. I'll just put it back to the side. So we have here. So yes, the function in MBTI. Yes, it's paired with demonstrative. So the idea being that the idea is to partner with the ENFP, a developed ENFP, because I only think duality works when both of the individuals are rounded out, so they're back passengers, tertiary and inferior, are mature. An extreme ENFP is not going to work well with an extreme ISTJ.
Oh no, they'll strangle each other.
Yeah. Whereas the ISTJ with the fun side and the ENFP with some TE, they're going to appreciate themselves being a mutually beneficial team, and there'll be a symbiotic duality.
Ben, that's funny you would mention that. I did a joint project once with Bob McAlpin of Type Resources, and he's ISTJ, retired military, okay? I mean, this guy taught leadership in the military, and when he was young, he flew a military helicopter in Vietnam. So this guy's like the real thing, retired military, classic ISTJ. And we were doing a type webinar, so we were both being very open about type. And at one point, something was said. I said, you know, Bob, if we'd tried to do this when we were younger, we both might have ended up killing each other. And he said, oh, Carol, you would have had to kill me long before I would have needed to kill you. He was very good humored about it.
Yeah, you can get that with it's like it surprises you.
That's interesting because I know ISTJ, and bear in mind, like, I'm 22, and like I met this guy when I was 19 and he was 22, or he was 21. Anyway, the point being, he was a very immature ISTJ and I was slightly more mature relative. Like, we swapped over and he's actually gained a lot of strength in the areas that he was lacking. But I think it would have been the opposite way around, where he would have got aggressive very quickly and I would have been able to see his emotional triggers, and I would have annoyed the hell out of him by not making arrangements, but ultimately he would have been the one who would have killed me. Yeah. Not the other way around.
Right.
Because I would have been like, I don't know, I would have been very, maybe it's to do with the typing, whereas I would have been very like relationship orientated and he would have just been like source of threat. But yeah, it perhaps is, we've grown up to be very different. It's been very cool seeing me become more TE and him become less kind of like dogmatic in his ideas and like more flexible, and just generally, and more flexible in his playfulness, because he always valued being playful, which I think is cool for an ISTJ.
Excellent. So now we can talk a little bit about the externalities thing. So this is, I can give an example of this. Oh, that one's opened up by mistake. Right.
Sorry about the example.
That's all right. I can give you an example of this. If I were to ask you, Carol, do you think that in general, most extroverts can handle themselves and are okay with extroverted sensor?
I don't know. Extroverted sensing is my 8th function, and I don't pay good enough attention to where I am in time and space and body awareness. Like if I tried to do something like rock climbing, I would die, Ben. I would just die because I wouldn't have enough awareness of myself in my body and the things around me to not kill myself. So I get it that I can't do some of those daring physical things that extroverted sensing leading people can do, because they're so developed in extroverted sensing, they are able to do very daring things with their body. And I wouldn't pay good enough attention for long enough to keep myself safe. So maybe
So you know how I was going to say that there was going to be a difference between me and Carol? This is the difference. I was the child that climbed the, sorry, I'm really sorry, but I was the child that climbed the tree, like to the 7th thing, and people were like, and I'd go around, and then obviously being ENFP, then I'd think it was funny because I'd start singing from the top of the tree, and they'd be like, where's the sound coming from? And they'd look around everywhere, and they'd never think to look up the tree. But the point being that, like, I was the daredevil, and like, I don't know, this is how I was made. This is perhaps a variant of the typical typology thing. I'm not aware of time and space, but I'm very aware of my body and physicality and climbing and doing stuff.
Right.
If I'm in the present in the moment. My
experience, Ben, as a child is my best friend lived next door, and she was ESFP. And it was very, as an adult, once I learned this looking back, it was very clear to me to see how much more physically confident and physically daring she was as a child. And whether we were skating or climbing the mimosa tree or riding bikes, she was always the one leading, and I was the one trying to keep up because she was so physically confident that she was always being more daring.
I think perhaps the small difference between ENFP and ASFP was I would always play the role of the more confident child who the kids followed, but I'd never do it competitively. I'd want them to join in on my fun, but I wouldn't want to challenge anyone. Like when I was doing stuff, it was for my own fun, and I think that might be a difference between perhaps an ESTP or even an ESFP perhaps than ENFP.
Right.
Maybe not ESFP actually.
So Ben, my answer to you is no. In my experience, some people are so end to end, they're not able. No, I don't think all extroverts can do extroverted sensing well.
Ooh, there's a little bit of theoretical. Okay, I'm gonna. First of all, I thought this was hilarious when Rachel wrote it, because I just thought that is so ENFP. What is a straight line of reasoning? Because
sorry, my thing didn't come up. When did I write that?
You wrote it in the chat.
Where, recently? It was this like this looks like
there you go. It was yesterday.
I think I wrote it ironically.
Yes.
But like, I mean, it's a serious point, but it's also ironically because I know how many people would just be like completely turned off by that level of like, I don't know, extrapolation. It's got so many elements of possibility that I was like, what even is a real straight line of thinking? Right. But actually, I don't know what is straight line of thinking.
Yeah, Cal, we're going to go over this a little bit more, Cal, when we actually get to the break function.
Oh, no, I do remember writing this.
Go on,
this was a serious point. This was a serious point. Like, what is a straight line of thinking? Like, yeah, that is a serious point.
Oh, you want to know what a straight line of... Well, it's basically the thing that TJs do, where they can like start with a bit of data and just go follow it and not have any moments the way we do.
And Ben, I think it's even in its most extreme form, it's STJ as opposed to NTJ, because NTJs do relational rather than linear logic, and STJ in particular does both logic and linear. And they think logic is linear, and INTJs get it that logic doesn't have to be linear, logic can be relational.
Basically, I think one thing especially about STJs is what they'll do is they'll define things so tightly that the flaw of the logical reasoning is that if you've got any of the definitions of any of the stages of the reasoning wrong, then you're going to end up at the wrong conclusion. So it might be a straight line of reasoning, but your answer might be over here and you might have gone in that direction.
Yeah, and the
and that's why, even though it is possible to do that, and I don't enjoy it, like I try to sometimes question my assumptions before I stream forward. But at the same time, it's very valuable.
Right. So, we can go over that in the. My point there, Carol, about SE was that if you were to compare ENFP and INFP, I would say that INFP has more trouble with extroverted sensor than ENFP, because ENFP is going to encounter it more when they go out the house.
Well, that may be true, but INFP is kind of an extreme case, Ben.
Yes, like INTP and you see, INTPs and INFPs are really SE weak. SE is the weakest function in those two types.
And that's your seventh, and that's your trickster instead of your demonic. That's your trickster. For me, it's a demonic. For you, it's a trickster.
Yeah, you see, I got a little bit annoyed by that with John Beebe because like I did a TI thing. You know,
I feel like when I was a kid, they would be the one type that I would literally stop. Like if I was running around and I would be like, "Come on, guys, just enjoy me." They'd be the one type that I'd stop and I'd be like, "Okay, let's just like walk home. Like it's gonna be okay."
Your INTPs, INFPs, or both?
More the INFPs, but like no, the INFPs we'd sit down and we'd like tell a story. The INTPs, we'd have a discussion about like something to do with space or whatever, and like then I'd walk them along the path home and make sure that they got home safely to their parents.
Yeah, but there's also this thing where, I mean, we had a hangout on it, Rachel.
And okay, this is true to my ENFP style. Occasionally I would not be able to resist and I'd be like, just sit there, like make sure you look after the bags, just stand still, I'm gonna go climb a tree, I'll be back in 2 minutes, and just hope that they didn't freak out.
Hey, I used to climb on stuff as well when I was a little kid. Like apparently my mother told me that my relatives, when I would visit relatives, they had to move the ornaments and I would like climb on things. So, you know, I've got a little bit of ADHD myself. I've got some NP points. Right, so excellent. So the idea here, though, is remember you've read, I suppose you're very familiar, Carol, with Dario's book, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership.
Absolutely.
In that book, right at the back, he said something like, introverts overall report greater comfort with all of their introverted functions. And so like they can do even basic activities related to those functions quite well. And so this is the idea that ENFP as an extrovert, all of their extroverted functions are outwards. So in other words, if we actually use what extroversion is, being objective and towards the world, then you've got their objective intuition, which is intuition which is stimulated by outside possibilities.
Right.
Even if that's an idea from somebody, it's still from the outside.
Right.
Say, especially with a conversation, if you have a conversation between two NE valuers, then they're going to be going all night until they get worn out. And then you've got FE, which is again coming from the outside. It's reading all the body language, feedback, societal stuff, societal if not objective. And then we've got the extroverted sensing in terms of, well, socionics would say it's related to power. And as I said last time, that in my opinion, I don't put enough in about freedom.
Ooh,
yeah, right.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I was good with physical space, but I was not comfortable with power dynamics. If anyone exerted power over me, I would be scared. Even the tiniest amount of like emotional or physical force was a no-no always. Even though, and it really used to kind of confuse people that I was able to be so physical in my body and so kind of out there, and yet I didn't want to play those power games, even though perhaps I look like someone posturing.
But you could push back more than say an INFP. And that's the thing about the role function, where
maybe I didn't want to and I didn't know how until I was a lot older.
Yeah, that's the thing with development. Let's say an ENFP can push back. I remember I said, Carol, that the ENFP can like stand.
I really didn't know how to push back until I was a lot older, and I really have only a limited ability to do that. Like it's one of my weaknesses. Like apply enough force to me enough, like for close enough in frequency, like I'll buckle. I just can't.
Ben, the only exception I can think to what you're saying here, quoting Dario, my stepfather was INTJ. My father was ISTP. He was a really brilliant, borderline, I'm forgetting, high-level autism. What did Asperger's?
Yeah.
I think my father was Asperger's before he knew what it was. He was ISTP. He was fabulous with his hands. So what he did during the day was use his dominant function, introverted thinking, to do his computer stuff. But he'd come home, and what he did to relax was he took cars apart and put them back together. He built rooms on houses. So ISTP has this extraordinary comfort with extroverted sensing that I'll never come close to. So
Very much.
I
I
think
also
Dario,
know someone very similar to this, 100% consistent with my experience. Like,
Right.
I know some ISTPs, they're extremely independent, extremely able to be placed on time, to put things together, to take things apart, to know how things work. Like, they are so practical in a way, and actually able to physically understand some power stuff that just doesn't work for me.
go ahead, Ben. That's just the only exception I can think of to that is the ISTP that I've had so much time to observe
ISTPs are
was
awesome.
clearly so comfortable with the external world, external sensing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also like this ISTP that I knew was so much more aware of, like, I mean, obviously the comfort in his physical body, but how it related to like how to look after himself and stuff. Like, so.
I would say theoretically, ISTP territory. Well, seeing as most of the world is SE stuff, they're going to be on their territory a lot when they're interacting with it. So that is going to be a strong function. If, say, they were in a society that was like extremely NF, where they couldn't really use their SE, then you really
Oh yeah,
wouldn't
they're
see it as
completely
much.
lost. Like, it's really interesting, like with this guy, because he's into he kind of knows a lot of hippie girls. So like when there's me and these other girls, he's kind of like and we're like doing like these long conversational stuff. He's like, and he's in certain social groups. He just can't, like, he has to be within like a certain, like, actually the corporate world is great for him, but he has to be in a certain world before he can do that. But not everything I'm describing, not the practical stuff. Like, some of the practical stuff is just he's just aware of that, full stop.
Oh yeah, something else I've got to mention. This is the social adaptation block. And so this is an idea that ENFPs can sort of go to this mode when the first two functions don't work. And
Which
so,
mode? The SE mode?
Yeah, SETE mode.
1 second, let's think. So this is this, at what stage of tragedy is this?
I don't really know. We'd really need Maria.
Like, how bad is things? Is this like moderate panic, low panic, like the world's gonna end? Like, what's the next shift that happens?
I don't really know, because there's different shifts under different circumstances.
Ben, my experience with this is, I think you're teaching me something here. I think the way I would express this is I have an extraordinarily long fuse. Extraordinarily long. But if I get pushed hard enough, I can go to there.
Yeah.
But it almost...
Oh, you mean like you have to go to
hard.
fight mode? Like, it takes a lot to get you into fight mode, but when you're in fight mode, you can fight.
Yes.
That was terrifying, but...
Yes, but it takes an extraordinary... Almost nobody ever sees it, because I almost never get pushed that far. Only a few times in my life have
The
I.
only problem is, like, when we are that far, like, I'm, like, obviously you can go there, but, like, I feel like it's almost like we have these abilities and we don't even know that we have to almost, like, let ourselves use them, because actually we have them and we know how to use them, but it's like, my eyes look slightly demonic right now, but yeah.
And Ben, when I use it, it's because someone has just so violated my boundaries and they've pushed me so far. The only way I can... Going here is the only thing I can do to protect myself.
Yeah, and this is what I mean about the role function. INFPs can't do that. ENFPs
they're too gentle. I can believe that. They're too gentle.
So that's what I mean about the break function actually being weaker than the role function. And the reason why John Beebe has done the model the way he's done is he's tried to make it too compatible with the MBTI stack, where it's like, oh, it's the other side of the inferior, therefore it has to be.
SET ENFP is terrifying. Don't go there.
Look at that.
You've been warned.
So there's always a better model out there. One day there'll be a better model than Model G. So now we can get onto the bullet points, and we are blessed by having 2 ENFP cats in the Hangout. So if we go over the first one,
Cool cats.
she is often guided by down-to-earth reasons.
I would say 40% of the time.
I have no idea. I'm such an idealist. I have no idea what percentage I would be guided by that.
I think, like, to the extent that I can't necessarily even tell the difference between what is a down-to-earth reason and what's not a down-to-earth reason. Like, that's how questionably good I am at that.
Questionably good, I like it. Next one. She is motivated by a matter that is not only interesting, but also profitable.
If I could figure out how to make profitable happen, that'd probably be true, Ben.
I really have to. I have to be in a situation of lack before I think about profitable. I actually have to be in a situation where I either perceive or there is a lack. So sometimes I have to like make myself mentally expect or look at trajectories so that I can conceive that there will be a lack. By the way, I just did my nails. But before. That's awful, but I thought I'd be an extreme ENFP. Before, I just thought I'd make this hilariously stereotypical. But yeah, so yeah, profitable is something that I'm very capable of doing, but I have to be in a situation that I have to.
Yeah, I just wondered, Carol, I mean, with your development from like TJ Parents and over the years and running your own life coaching business, do you think you've learned to find a blend of the NE with the TE?
I've had to, running a business, you have to do it more, but it would benefit me more if what I really want is a business partner who runs the business and then just lets me do the catalyst stuff that I love to do. But think about it from Jung's perspective, that would stop my development. That would just let me stay in my preferences. So not having a business partner who like runs the business, I have to develop the other pieces of myself. And Jung says that's why we're here, is to become fully differentiated and develop the other pieces of ourselves. So Carl Jung would say it was perfect that I've not been given a business partner to run the business for me.
That's
I don't think that response to what you're saying about. Ben just asked a question. What did you say again, Ben? Because I had something very important to say to that, but I forgot what it was.
I just said Carol was putting a positive spin on not having a partner that would do.
No, but before she said that, you asked her a question that prompted her to say that.
Oh,
what question did you ask her?
Was it good that because of her development and going and having TJ Parents and having to like and running a business herself, has she used the NE with the TE? Something like that. The question was like that.
And I just said,
I remember. It's something to do with being profitable.
Rachel, you said you went there when you had to.
So as an ENFP, whilst I focus on profits when I have to, and it's a short-term strategy, I'm like, okay, I have to do this in order to get here. I actually have found in my experience that's very anxiety-invoking because I worry about the end result. So I find it more effective to think about the process and do what I feel is within my ideals. And I find that in the long run, over a course of many years, the kind of actions that feel right tend to result in progress as long as I do enough productivity stuff. For me, if I do too much focus on productivity, the initial, it's like the curve of improvement. So to start off with, you think you're amazing. And most of the time I'm in this I'm amazing denial mode. Then when I start measuring, then obviously your confidence plummets and you get very anxious. And then as you start to improve in the quality of a skill, but frequently you don't need yourself to be highly skilled in order to achieve productivity on a task. So actually the most important thing is to minimize your anxiety levels around performing that task because it just needs to be performed. And over time, if you perform it enough, then you will improve in your effectiveness on it. So basically, productivity is something that I think is useful to focus on to an extent. And I would question how much to focus on it fully, because if it's too clearly defined, it can result in excessive anxiety that can hinder the process of progress rather than improve it, because you can give up rather than proceed.
Yeah, and so that beautiful is a great example of where Dr. G was saying about that function where the person doesn't have a lot of energy for it, but they're aspirational for it and they want to develop it. But it's like I said, eyes bigger than the belly kind of function where it's like there has to be like other things happening in the person's life and maybe other functions coming into play to develop that. So it's like the lead function might really come into play of like, come on, let's get to grips, let's get disciplined here, let's develop this function. It will be another value coming into place that will help develop it.
Or an external force.
Yes.
More likely, because frequently people are more likely to develop in the context of
especially
being
TA.
pressured. And especially with T, if you're not particularly strong in it, then if you kind of just like, oh, this is a wonderful conceptual idea in this hyperspace. But yeah.
So, for example, I talked about the role function. I think the role function that is strongest is TE role for FE DOMs. Number one, FE DOMs are EJ and have a lot of energy. and plus FE, they want to fit in with other people, and so when they're going to be in a work atmosphere, it says there, Ben is my mom.
What the hell? Where?
Jonathan's gone NE. Usually he decries NE.
Yes! I think I've influenced him. I finally got to him. He's not going to like me saying that.
Oh, I've forgotten what I was saying. What was I saying?
Slight divergence, but you can see the dichromism in my eyes right now. You can see the blue and the green because my eyes are so black.
Oh, interesting.
I think you can see it. Also, the colour scheme of my nails.
Some people might have thought that you put a contact lens in to like change to make one eye different. What's that? Oh.
You were discussing how people don't have much energy for their tertiary function.
ESFJ, because like ESFJ's got a ton of energy, and they're at work, and because FE is directed towards pleasing other people, they will go towards doing something that they don't actually prefer for themselves, but ironically pleases other people. And being all business-like will please other people, therefore they will go into that mode. So which ironically pleases other people by going into a business mode.
Yeah.
You know, but look at Oprah, ENFJ Oprah.
Yeah.
Look at how her drive and her ability to lead and her desire to get something. I mean, she's a beautiful example of how an ENFJ can just accomplish and create an empire. I mean, she's just amazing example of ENFJ.
Not many other people would have the nerve, even Trump, to have a magazine with just his photo on every single cover.
But I think he would like. I think he would like that very much, though.
Yeah, he would like that. Though. He would like that. I think he would.
Sorry, Mum.
Right. What have we got here? Number 3. Expects quick results from experimental projects. Otherwise, switches to a different direction. Here's a nitty-gritty one.
Oh yeah, I'm not known for my patience. Ben, I'm sorry, I'm not. Now with people and animals, I'm very patient because that's the feeling thing. But no, I admire people like ISTJs and INTJs who will have this incredible patience to really see it through. I want this thing to work, or hey, we must be on the wrong track here. So yeah, patience is not my forte.
This is interesting because again, this is another thing that's changed since my teenage years. It depends whether I feel confident in my method, because if I'm confident in my method and that it's been well tried and done before, I will stick to it, and I have almost a weakness of sticking to things sometimes beyond the point at which it's necessary. But definitely when I was 14, 15, like, that doesn't work, do something else, that doesn't work, I'm just feeling like I was failing the whole time, because I would just jump from thing to thing to thing to thing. But like now I've kind of got it, that I failed so many times that I'm like, you know what, it's worth sticking to something, because consistency breeds achievement. See whether I implement that though. Haven't done that much recently.
Yeah.
I'm probably just not very realistic in my self-image, and I imagine that I've learned from all my mistakes.
In terms of Enneagram, Rachel might resemble Enneagram 7 or 4. There's going to be quite a few 4-ish traits in there because there's an overlap of 4-ish traits with. This is where Jonathan could come in. 4-ish traits with NF. No, Jonathan's just an Enneagram
expert.
Oh, right.
He doesn't quite want to be called an expert.
You didn't really think that I was
Enneagram
Enneagram 4 until... sorry, that was a bit strong, but I'll ask you about Enneagram before, because it's interesting that you're saying 4, because that's the first time recently, or really that I've heard you say that. When I first saw you, I'm like, I'm sure I'm a 4. And I was like, please say I'm not a 4. I'm sure I'm a 4, but yeah.
I was just saying that there's those traits in there.
Well, there's Jonathan. There's Jonathan. What do you think, Jonathan? What would you like to contribute, Jonathan?
He's got an impressively blank face currently. Oh!
I'm just going to Yes, I'm just going to blank face.
Yeah, so Jonathan, does Rachel come across as E7 or any particular Enneagram type strike you?
I exaggerate the 7-ness because it's an ENFP thing, though. Like, you were like, oh, we have some ENFPs. So I was like, I'll be extra.
You're like a 7 on crack.
Jonathan.
I don't care if you're exaggerating. I think 7 is obvious.
You're choking me up, Jonathan.
I'm going to say that was taken affectionately. I think you said that affectionately. You didn't say affectionately. But anyway.
So Jonathan, do you think Rachel and I are both? Do you think Rachel and I are both 479s?
No, I don't think you're 479 at all.
Oh, I'm a 27. I'm a 279, right? I'm sorry, I keep missing it. I don't know why I keep missing up 4 and 2. I have to go back and read it again. So you think I'm 279 and Rachel's 479?
Well, he didn't say anything about my type.
I never said anything about her type.
Okay, good.
So, yeah.
Well, you said 7 on crack, and she said
yes.
So do you have? Would you?
But I think she's a 7. Yes, but I don't think she's 479.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a bit different. I won't say what I think she is.
Oh,
Keep that a secret.
Yeah, we're looking at future hangouts on that.
In there, I'm so excited because like that would be like such a twist in my life story.
I love that Jonathan told me what I was because it was very helpful. I mean, I went and read about it, and it's fascinating.
Oh, you're doing the good neutral face right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rachel, if you had
I hate to stay impassive around the ENFPs. You know, if I show emotion, they'll pounce on it. Like
they'll go after you.
It's like they're cats and my emotions are a laser.
I feel like ENFP. Is how I feel like around ENFJs. Like just I don't know how to be impassive. I'm just like run. But yeah.
That's the thing where I talk about where.
Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna have to guess my Enneagram. Okay. So when I was younger, I thought I was a 4W3 because I kind of like had loads. I was really like unclear in my sense of self, and I like used to be very like all my poetry for like 6 years of my childhood was just like. Anyway, Jonathan doesn't agree with this, I feel. But anyway, all my poems from like my childhood, they're just like I don't know. I think I wrote a song. They're just very whatever. I don't think I am, but this is just my first thing. And then also like I was really like aristocratic for a period of time, which wasn't cool. But yeah, I had like this whole sense of hierarchy, which I don't anymore. And I didn't feel comfortable with, but I had a very ingrained sense of that. And I cared a lot about achievements and my own achievements, and was bad at it. Which made me lament in a very foolish kind of way, and it was very quiet. Yeah, you remind me of my friend Blake. My friend Blake is into heavy metal music, and he thinks he's an ENFP, but I don't know. He's a very loving kind of person. That's why Jonathan reminds me of Blake.
I remind you of an ENFP who's into heavy metal music.
Yes.
Okay.
It is a little bit odd.
It is a little bit odd, yes.
If I send you a photo of him and like a video of him, I now have to nail.
That's heavy NE finding that broad connection.
You'd understand if you saw him. You're like a more gentle version of him, but yourself.
You okay?
Well, when he's a SE value, he might not be wanted to be called gentle.
Sharp yet warm-hearted. Is that better? I'm just going to be quiet.
Yeah, I was just joshing. I'll just wait for Carol to get back. So I'll just say something to the audience about. So I have a theory that's compatible with the model. Is that, and you can see it in behaviour as well, that the ENFP is more attentive to social feedback. So when they're doing their NE thing, they are more aware of the effect they're having on the audience, and they tend to comment on the effect they're having on the person.
It's great for stand-up because you can end up like commenting on your comments of your comments.
Yeah.
Before you know it, like you've gone from like a pub in London to like the back street of like an old cat shed in Jerusalem, like mentally, and you're like, how did I get here? So yeah.
Cat.
That never happened to me, promise.
So Carol, did you have an NE moment and go off and do something else? And
I went off and did an SE thing that we won't talk about.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, socionics, that would be classified as an SI thing.
Oh, okay.
Pick someone up. Right, so what have we got here? Oh yeah, I can ask Rachel this. So have you been in a situation where you've had projects and then you switch to other projects. So bullet point number 3 in TE, have you like had ideas and then switched to other ones? Like, well, not had enough energy for them.
Say that again.
You know, it says number 3, where you have an idea for something and then you lose energy for it and go on to another idea in the TE realm. Has that been your experience?
I haven't taken on enough projects recently to be able to comment. I'm sorry.
Right, okay, number 4. In complicated financial situations, invents various and sometimes even venturesome solution methods.
Yes, and it was stupid and never again.
What about you, Carol? I mean, you could just hint at it if you don't want to go into full details.
Oh, I can say it very quickly. I hate dealing with financial stuff. I just hate it. I have to. I'm a homeowner, a car owner, taxpayer, but I hate it. It's just one of the things you have to do in life and get on with it.
Right, so number 5, takes up critical and even dead-end affairs, and I'll go to the bullet point in a moment, if gets access to the necessary resources. And so what we did, I asked, so I put there, because I asked Lena what the translation was, because this is where Lena was translating. Well, you know what that, no. Anyway, so she wrote that bit there in black. Is that large enough for you to read, that bit in black, or should I make it?
Oh.
Yes, it is. I can read it.
Okay.
I'm just not sure I know how to apply that to my. I'm just not sure how to apply that to myself.
I don't know what it means. I don't understand what it means.
Okay,
so.
I'll read it and then I'll just give it my best shot.
Oh, 1 second. Is this? Oh no, that's a different one. This is.
No, I don't think I try to complete Mission Impossible just because the resources are there.
When IE faces a problem which might have almost no chance of completions, IE sees there are the resources. He will try to complete the task. Yes, this is one of the other issues I used to come into contact with consistently before I had this whole like reflection on what my character flaws were. Actually, this is a slight tangent, but I'm going to say it. So my experience with self-reflection, which occurred over maybe several months, sounds like very similar to the reflection that people seem to take on this ayahuasca thing, like the kind of realizations about themselves that they seem to have on this kind of, what's the word? It's related to LSD. Oh, fuck. I'll go in the other room. Sorry, ma'am. So the point being that I had these realizations that led to like significant changes in my character because I was just in a room and I had the time to reflect and the
epiphanies. You had an epiphany, Rachel. You had an epiphany.
I had quite a lot of epiphanies. So probably I wouldn't. So this is kind of why I say I used to, because I mean over several years I worked out things that failed because I kind of went on a journey of doing lots of things, lots of times and failing many times. So from these failures I can be like, this is what I used to do. I used to try and complete tasks that were just not completable consistently.
Right, so you can see that can work with the resources and it stimulates the NE. Oh, we could do this, we could do this.
And like if there was even 1 success in 10, I'd be like, yeah, I'm amazing. And I'd keep on doing it.
But you know, that's not that bad because the NPs have so many ideas that a 1 in 10 hit rate is not that bad.
I mean, I was good at doing the impossible, but didn't stop it from being impossible or virtually impossible. Right. And often, like, what would happen is I'd expend excessive resources on achieving things that were improbable, and thereby not have enough resources to do things that were realistic.
Now, number 6 applies to me. I can see that completely. I totally get that. NE just goes, oh, yeah, we got so many ways we can do that.
Oh, that's interesting because like, that's true. But at the same time, like, yeah, I'll find many ways to spend it. But again, I'm like, especially the last kind of year or two, I've been a lot more conservative with, like, I don't want to excessively spend because I predict that there will be times that, like, I will need it. And so I don't buy coffees out. I don't spend my money. Like,
and we won't go into stereotypes about.
But yeah, like I spent thousands of pounds, like when I was a teenager, like, and this is massive, like just on coffee over the course of a year. Like if you think about it, you have 1 coffee a day, every day for a year, you're into £1,000.
And I'm interpreting this as more as a larger thing than money. I wasn't even thinking about spending money. I was thinking about having the ability for me leading a team, it was the number of writers I had, right? I was thinking of this in not just money, but a bigger kind of set of resources.
Can you expand a little bit, please?
Yeah, like in the work situation, resources were the number of people I had at my disposal to help get the task done. It wasn't money, it was people.
So you find many ways of completing the same task. Is that what you're saying?
Well, many ways
so
to
you could have
take
like Jeff. So let's say if there was me, Jeff, you, and Ben. Like you could say, oh well, Jeff is good at this. Good at let's just imagine a hypothetical situation where he's good at making light bulbs, but he's also a really good speaker. You could imagine a situation in which two different situations, one in which an imaginary Fiona did the light bulbs and Jeff did the speaking, and another situation where Jeff did the light bulbs and Fiona did the speaking, but obviously timed the complexity by like 40.
Sure. And like if I had more writers, I would come up with an idea of additional new book ideas for us to do. Like we invented a whole new series of books at one point when we were between big projects. And that was I had the writers and then we came up with the idea and we did it. So thank you, Ben. I've never actually put these two things together before.
Yeah, that's so true for me actually. Again, if I am in a situation, my mental limits are within the resources I have available. As soon as I'm in a situation where I discover that actually the opportunities or the resources are greater, then my mind is able to immediately find ways to achieve that. And I wouldn't even conceive of it because it wouldn't be conceived as a possibility until those resources become available, which can be a bit of a limitation for me actually, because I find it very difficult to imagine myself being very successful, and therefore I have difficulty planning for being very successful until the success occurs. It's also good because obviously you can only, I'll just summarize this quickly, you can only plan to a certain degree of like farness into the future.
Carol, how much time do we have left?
I'm thinking about 11 more minutes, but I could actually go. I could go 20. I could go 21 more minutes.
Okay, excellent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show the definitions of NE. Then we'll go to Dario's assessing current development.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing in response to Jonathan. Yeah, I've been going through Hackney, and several times people are like, "What are you on?" Because I really want to be on that. So yeah, people do think I'm on drugs quite frequently.
I'm sorry, Rachel. What's Hackney?
Oh.
Ben thought that was hysterical. Whatever it is I just passed, Ben thought it was very funny.
Right, so does Rachel.
I find it partly funny how funny Ben finds it, but are you in touch with the charts at the moment? Like the music charts?
No.
Okay.
Evidently not. Evidently not.
So,
is it a musical group?
Where do you live again? Where do you live?
I'm in the U.S. Are you saying it's a musical group? Is that what you're talking about?
You don't want to specify.
No, I'm from North Carolina. I'm in the southern part of the U.S.
Okay, so like, you know, like downtown Carolina, right? The bit you don't really want to go into because they do all the drugs there. And there are like people hanging on street corners, and then you coming through and people offer you drugs and stuff.
Okay, that's not true anymore here, but it was 20 years ago. Yes.
Yeah, so it may not exist. So there's a part of London that's also now being gentrified.
Okay.
Called the borough of Hackney.
Okay.
Hackney is quite broad, but a couple of weeks ago I was checking out a renovated warehouse for people who are creative in London, and actually ended up being taken. But a lot of kind of left-wing people who I personally believe don't do that much with their lives. But anyway, not because they're left-wing, but anyway, because I'm also left-wing. But the point being, I left and there was a very loud car that rammed up next to me, and a guy was like, in a pretty strong London mixed with Jamaican accent, asked me, and I can't do the impression because it was too long ago, "What are you on?" Because I want to be on that shit. So I was like, "Nothing, man, I'm fine, cheers, bro." And he was like, kept trying to get my attention, and he was like, "Gal, come over!" And I was like, I just like gave him the look and like shook my head and walked off, or possibly just looked away. So that was the end of that. He drove off very loudly, ramming into the distance, and then I ended up on a bridge that led to, if anyone who was watching this knows, Stratford, and there are a bunch of school children who were setting off fireworks. So that's Hackney.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've got TE on screen, and so you can take that in, Carol. You've got TE plus and TE minus. Victor thinks that the left spinning types use TE plus, and the right spinning types use TE minus, and they can also use the other side of the charge. And he gives
that first thing, turning the commonplace upside down, noticing the hidden side, I do that without trying. I'm not even trying, and I do that.
Where is this?
Oh, that's TI plus, I think.
Yeah, the TI plus
I'm
stuff
looking
is all the
at
stuff
I'm
we find
looking
easier.
at NE minus right there. I see.
Oh yes.
One of my colleagues said the strength she saw in me as a coach is that I use my trickster to completely flip something around so the client could turn it to their advantage instead of it being a problem. So it's like I don't even try to do that. My brain just goes there and sees that.
Well,
I try and to the extent that I actually try and avoid any minus, because it happens so naturally that sometimes avoiding boredom can actually get in the way of me producing a project if I'm doing what I'm doing, or
all of us,
see things another way. Oh, can you? Okay, because it's confusing me that you've moved it because I was reading off the screen.
Okay, I'll go back.
Sorry. Yes. Oh God, that's
time pressures.
There
you
go. So my turning things upside down again can be disruptive. My noticing the hidden side of things can be unappreciative and irritating and not funny because no one else sees it. So all of that, NE minus, I've actually and again, my setting things apart, I can set myself two apart and then show myself up. All of this NE minus stuff is stuff that I've actually learnt to somewhat suppress in the right contexts. I've learnt to moderate the amount of risks I am. I've learnt that sometimes it's better to create something that's lasting, but I still value originality. So the NE minus stuff is stuff that I've learnt to kind of take care of.
Right, and so we got. So Cal will give us a little bit of an extension, I hope. We've got about 15 minutes, I hope. So we've got this stuff about making a profit, and so it's like the idea that, say, ENTJs are a little bit more adventuresome with their TE, take more risks, and the ESTJs
I am
a bit
so
more
TI plus according to this.
Absolutely.
Or my family is so TI plus. It annoys me because my approach is very TE and my mum's approach is very TI, and it's just showing how those contrast.
Right, okay. And I'm just going to show a little bit of the other, then we can get to Dario's thing. And we've got this here with the P. Business logic, a function that shows as active, obstinate, enduring behavior.
Where? What? Oh.
On the new thing.
Is this elements of TE?
These are Victor's short definitions of the functions.
What is P? I don't know what P refers to.
Oh, it's just TE. It's Victor's. He has a one letter.
Okay, thank you.
P for practical thinking.
Got it.
And L for logic.
I understand now.
Right, and now we can go to Dario's assessing self-development.
Why are there 5 of them?
Because I've not gone like that and shown 8.
Okay.
Oh yes, here
that was a very non-ENFP thing to think.
I remember thinking this was quite good, and I remember.
I found this hilarious. I'm an intuitive mum. I'm profound and abstract. Senses don't think.
Jonathan, I saw Jonathan's comment on Facebook about a year ago, and he said, "Oh, this is old as anything."
I've never seen it, so thank you. This is funny.
Right.
I actually just thought I was an odd duck because there was nobody else like me around me, so I just always felt like odd man out. Like my whole childhood, I was having.
Can you guys turn my volume up, or maybe I was shouting already because I was speaking too loudly. Apparently, I have hearing cancelling headphones in, and it's really confusing.
So you want me to
turn me? I don't know if you could hear me too well. I don't know if I was too loud. I don't know what's going on.
No, we can hear.
We can hear you quieter now. Because I couldn't hear how loudly I was speaking because my headphones were cutting out sound.
I think, Rachel, if you talk quieter, it will adjust and increase the sensitivity of your microphone. So if you talk
I am talking quieter
lower
already.
objectively, it won't be lower on the Hangouts.
Okay, great.
Ben, I was saying I knew I was odd man out, that I was different. I didn't know why. but ENFP preferences. I knew I was different, and I couldn't find other people like me. And being NF, I very much wanted to belong. So I can remember as a child, it was an enduring feeling of wanting to fit in and not stand out and belong, because I felt like I was different and an odd duck in some way, and I didn't want to be an odd duck. I wanted to be accepted. That's a very vivid experience of me as an ENFP preference child.
Yeah, and so that's a difference as well from NTPs. You've got the temperament aspect of NF,
right?
Wanting to fit in, but wanting to be authentic, and then also the creative FE, where you're attentive to the effect your NE has on other people and can adapt.
Basically, I wanted to joke about, but people to appreciate me joking about, and not only to joke about, but be 100% myself, and them to accept me based on what I thought was right, which is
very
completely reasonable, right?
Yeah, and Ben, you're actually quite right. There's a struggle inside me as an NF, is the absolute need to be authentic and not violate my internal values, at the same time wanting to be accepted and to fit in. And you're right, there's a tension that's just almost constant throughout life.
In my life. When I've compromised those values, I found that part of myself has almost been like subsumed and taken internally and has come out in other ways. It's like part of me has been like, I don't know, masked or taken in. I don't know how to explain it, but like, it's like it's been violated by my violation of my principles.
Yeah.
What I do is, in a slight variation from Victor, I call the creative function the creative shadow, because it's something that's very powerful but can also go a bit wrong. So, for instance, if an INTP goes too much NI, they can like so much believe that their theory is right and like concentrate on it. And maybe an INTJ would be, they become really obstinate. Ben,
what are we looking at here? Part 1, 2, and 3 of what?
This is Dario's self-assessment. This is going to be the climax of the hangout, and we can ask both of you.
What's at the top of the page, though? What is it?
About the point system. Tell her about the point system.
Okay.
Understand the point system.
Yeah, you're right there, Rachel. I should have brought that up. Yes. Part 1 is basic use. So basically, part 3 is the highest use of TE, and part 1 is the easiest, is the lowest level of TE. And so basically, when you're doing the self-assessment, if you tick a box in part 1, each tick in part 1 is worth 1 point. Each tick in part 2 is worth 2 points, and each tick in part 3 is worth 3 points.
I think we should color code them. I think we should color code them and have them have different aspects, because this is more like a spectrum of TE than like a linear thing. Because a 1 point doesn't actually constitute a third of a point. 1 point in part 1 isn't like a third of a point in point 3. It's like a different kind of point. The points have their own flavors. So really, I think we should make like a spectrum of TE.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, and so
I will make one of these for you and show you it, and it will be pretty.
Excellent.
And life will be good.
So I'll go to Carol. We'll go Carol, then Rachel. So for the first one, Carol, are you ticking box number 1 in part 1 or no?
Well, actually, I've read down the whole thing now, and what I want to say is I'm astonished, but I'm looking at part 3, and I realize that it's my work life that made me develop part 3. If I hadn't had the kind of work I did and been challenged in the kind of environment I was, I would not have developed part 3, but I did have to develop part 3 to function there.
Oh yes, I've got to tell people, this is from Dario Nardi's book, so it doesn't kill me. Please buy his book, 8 Keys to Self-Leadership. It's his function book.
I own this book and have for years, and Dario's a friend of mine too, and B, I see you as advertising his book. Okay, Ben, not...
Thank you.
This is fair use in your advertising. Listen, I can't read the 3rd bullet point under part 3 because of the pictures. Would you read that 3rd one for me?
Bump it up a bit.
Thank you. Layout step. Oh, absolutely. You can imagine, as somebody who managed documentation projects, part 3, I had to develop all those. And I guess I have to thank work for doing that in me. If I had done a different work, I may never have developed that part of myself.
Right.
So I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay, so and also what you'll have noticed is if you see in part 3, some of the keywords will draw you towards certain types. Mobilize resources makes you think of the mobilizer in Kersey, ENTJ, and then you've got the supervisor, the supervise. So
Well,
I'll ask
remember, I was managing a team, so remember, I would have to be using some of extroverted thinking that way, mobilizing people and getting the projects done. So thanks for that realization.
So, Carol, as an NF, was that first one in part 2 hard for you? Sticking on making decisions based on impersonal measures?
You know, it really is, because I was going to have to ask you. Yeah, absolutely. With the exception of if I'm at work and it was really clear to me what the guidelines were and what I had to do. Again, I guess work developed that into me, because I totally don't do things based on impersonal measures. Naturally, I don't.
Right, and Rachel, if you can come on, I don't know if you can. Could you let us know how you are with these pointers? Okay, I'll ask Jonathan then. As an INFJ, and your type is supposed to be rubbish at TE or not like it. What do you think of these things?
Let's see. You don't know the time and what point you're at in the process. Yeah, I suppose I do, kind of. Determine success by measurement or other objective method, such as the time taken. Some of this sounds as NI actually. Bad at some of this. Yeah, part 1 seems pretty easy.
Yeah.
Part 2, and personal issues. I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Conceive a comprehensive plan to maximise progress towards goals. Perhaps in my mind, in the recesses of my subconscious, I'm not going to, I could, I just won't. Mobilise resources and supervise implementation. Yeah, probably not, no. Construct an argument to convince someone using evidence clearly in front of both of you. I actually used to be very bad at this, but when I was on, because I studied history, you have to get quite good at using references and backing up your argument with evidence, so that helped. And also, I used to be in internet forums, and I would get in arguments all the time about silly things, sometimes important things about the news and stuff, sometimes about comic books or whatever. And it was really annoying. The people I was arguing with, they insisted on evidence for absolutely every little thing. Even things, yes, I want to be right. E1 wants to be right. They insisted on evidence for every little thing. Even things I thought were intuitively obvious or logically obvious, they insisted on it, and therefore I got better at it in order to win those bloody arguments.
So you got better at TE for an FE reason?
Yes. If wanting to win is an FE reason, yeah. Sure. Or for wanting to be right.
Why is it FE reason on FI reason?
Well, it was just because it was said there for like convincing others.
Yes.
Lay out steps for others to complete the task. See, I think I could do that. But still, I don't mind laying out steps. So I don't. Yeah, I don't think I'm that bad at some of this stuff.
But is it like theoretic? It's not a full-hearted tick, though, is it?
Ben's like, conform to the stereotype, okay? Conform.
Naughty.
It's more than half.
His NI confused.
I do think though that Jonathan, as like Enneagram Type 1, there's more of that voice in his head to like get yourself.
Okay, it's gonna stop in 20 minutes. Okay.
There's an INFJ voice in Rachel's head. Right.
I think I wrote my answers down here somewhere. You did the thing. And
okay. So we can go through this with Rachel and then we'll wind up. And basically, I'll just say that Cole.
Oh no, it's gonna die. My phone, the thing's dying. It looks like it's dying. Oh no, it's not dying. Okay,
so Rachel, did you tick any of the boxes in part 1?
Sorry, I'm gonna have to do this on the trot. Yes, I do know the time point I'm at the process. Don't use an objective method. I do usually use objective method. I tend to. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Different people would differ in their concept of the straight line of reasoning, so probably only the first one. I think I use great reasoning, but other people might differ. I mean, the reasoning that I end up with to justify something is a straight line of reasoning. It's just I've cut off a lot of, like, it's like pruning a tree.
Yeah.
You never know quite which branch you're going to end up following.
Before you give us an example of that, because we press for time, if we move
I'm not
on
going
the
to.
next-
That was
next
a
one.
beautiful metaphor in and of itself.
Yes, it was pretty good. So how about this, sticking to making decisions based on impersonal measures, such as points earned?
Effie. Yeah, okay. I'll try and be quick. I prefer if I lose to be like I succeeded or lost because of that.
Right.
Rather than because of this person or because of who I am as a person. So yeah, I tend to be relatively impersonal in that regard. Decisions I make. Yeah, I tend to try and think about what the long-term consequences. I don't know. I don't know how to answer this quickly or concisely. And there is some kind of emotional pressure that I can't work out where it's coming from, sifting into my consciousness, saying that I need to be fast or quiet. And I'm not sure whether it's my mum or someone in this hangout, but regardless, I'm feeling anxious and unable to express myself.
You're doing fine.
Okay, so making decisions based on impersonal measures. I need to be quiet. My mum really wants me to be quiet.
You can whisper, we can still hear you.
Okay, so decisions based on it. I don't know. It's a weird atmosphere. Yeah, this is slightly better. I can't answer. Sorry, I'm just really overwhelmed. I don't know what's going on. Something's just hit me.
Okay.
I think she's really upset.
Yeah, she just wants to read in quiet. INFJ
Yeah.
intellectual.
Basically.
Yeah. So yeah, just whisper. So okay.
I don't know. I
Okay.
can't move. I would be in the other room, but I can't because the thing turns off.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I can conceive of a comprehensive plan, but exacting the details takes time and disproportionate effort compared to my general conceptualization. I have never been in a position to supervise the implementation since I was about 8, but I was great at it when I was 8, I thought, but that doesn't mean I was. I am studying law, so yes. Yes, actually, the third one has actually been something I've had to do for a lot recently, and I can do it. It's hard, and I enjoy the challenge. So yeah, but the combination of mobilizing resources and supervising implementation is quite a complex process for me and quite challenging, because I have to make decisions and ignore information, otherwise I get overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's really
what resources are allocated. I have to be like, no, nobody can give me more information. What resources are allocated to this? What resources are, and how do I implement it into this section, and then assign it to a section, and then compartmentalize the section, and then not think about the section until I get onto that compartmentalization, and make sure that it's thorough enough that the compartmentalization transitions into each other. I've described this to you already, so you get where I'm going. Transitions between the different compartments effectively, and then I have to trust the process. So yeah, that's hard, but also fun, but also requires suppression of any, but enough any to get the ideas in the first place. If some people can explain things clearly, complex ideas clearly, I think I can explain simple ideas complexly. I think that's my talent.
So Ben, are we at the end of this? Are we done?
Yeah, I think because you've got to go, haven't you, Carol?
Yeah.
Okay, so reality bites, folks. So this is going to be the end of the hangout, and I'd say goodbye, and we will have a little chat for about a minute or two. But this is bye for now from me.
Thank you,
Bye,
Ben.
everybody.
Bye, Rachel.